For a little background, in 2011, David Luba, Derek Emsley, and Kaylin Emsley were inspired to start a clothing brand that gave back to the earth, and they formed the company 10 Tree with a simple mission, as Mark mentioned. For every garment sold, they would plant 10 trees. 2 years later, the trio successfully pitched their concept on Dragon's Den, a show similar to, and I think it preceded, Shark Tank. In 3 short years, 10 Tree planted their first million trees, and by 2020 surpassed 50 million trees. And in 2021, PCNA's Trimark partnered with 10 Tree to make 10 Tree apparel available to the industry. And today, that's why we're visiting with David about how to build a high-impact brand and their experience building this brand. And note this, that the PCNA and 10 Tree collab has already planted 4 million trees in 2021. So that's incredible. Welcome to the stage, our friend David Luba.
Awesome. Thanks for the great introduction, Bobby and Mark. Thanks a lot. Really excited to be here.
David, happy birthday. For those that David's sharing his birthday with us. What a treat for you to share not only the day before Earth Day, but to share today your birthday with us. We're honored, doubly honored that you're here with us.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Dave. It's awesome to have you here. All right. I'm going to get started with the first question. We've got a ton of questions. I wish we had more time, but we're going to jump right into it. So, David, I want to start off talking a little bit about 10 Tree. We've set things up a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper into it. So you started 10 Tree with a mission at the company's inception. Right from the very beginning, this mission was woven into the DNA of 10 Tree. And that's a little bit different than starting a business and then rallying around a cause and a mission after the fact. I'm curious about what the hardest part about making this kind of commitment and sticking with it through the ups and downs from startup to success, and specifically how you've been able to take balance profits and passion together.
Yeah, great question. So when we came up with the idea for 10 Tree, it wasn't like we wanted to start a clothing company. We wanted to start a restorative brand that gave consumers the opportunity to give back to nature through tree planting. So our background was in tree planting before this. We planted trees and sold carbon credits to large oil companies and large carbon emitters around the world. And we saw an opportunity to inspire people to get outdoors. And if you don't enjoy what you want to protect, you're not going to protect it. And then B, we wanted to find a way to give each and every individual the opportunity to give back to nature. So that's how we came up with the idea for 10 Tree. So we started off first as a tree planting company. Clothing is our vehicle to plant those trees. And right when we started, we had pretty average apparel. We had American Apparel t-shirts. We printed positive impact on a shirt, creation over destruction, 1 ton, because that shirt took 1 ton of carbon out of the air. And we were really selling this movement, this idea of a restorative business. We were selling this community, this brand, and people weren't buying into that product. They were buying into the values that we had as an organization. Now, throughout time, over the last 10 to 11 years, we've been drinking from a fire hose, and we've learned the apparel industry. Now we've got product that stands on its own, where you'd go into a store and you're like, wow, this is a nice shirt. And we estimate about 35% of people that buy 10 Tree don't even really know about the trees until they get home and they're looking at the tag and that sort of thing. And some of the biggest challenges throughout our growth is really looking at the longer term plan, looking at our brand values, continuing to evolve everything to align with that. So we started with American Apparel t-shirts. Now we have a fully sustainable 99.9% sustainable materials, because our sustainability director won't let me say 100%, but everything's basically sustainable, from our pocket liners to our cork patches to our coconut buttons. So when you take a step back and you look at all of these small decisions we've made throughout the last decade to get us to where we're at today, where we have the second highest B Corp scored in our industry, and we just recertified. So we're, fingers crossed, we can maybe be number one in our industry. All of these little decisions where they cost money. It's not cheap. We definitely have smaller margins than our competitors. But we know that now when you look at the way people buy, before there were influencers and brands were product companies. You'd have a product, you'd get an influencer to go out there and promote your brand. But now there's been a merging of those two, and brands are now influencers as well. So when you think about a brand, every brand out there is now an influencer, and people are buying a lot more in line with their values. So one of the biggest challenges was staying true to our values, balancing those profits, and thinking about the longer term play, because it'd be really easy to maybe not be 100% sustainable. Maybe we don't invest in tree verification, and so forth.
David, I think it's for us to be successfully sell Tentry. I think we really need to understand a few critical terms and things that you live and breathe every day, all day long. Can you explain a little bit more what it means to be a restorative business?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about sustainability, sustainability has been something we're hearing more and more about. Brands are going from kind of your traditional cotton to organic cotton. It's made a little more sustainably. Brands are offsetting their carbon in the supply chain to be more sustainable. So sustainability is canceling out the negative, but not all of the negative. It's doing it a better way. Then when you look at circularity, that's basically looking to cancel out that negative. It's a circular product. It's going from point A to point B and back to its original form. Now, when we think of what it means to be a restorative business, that is what's next, where it's a step further than sustainability, two steps further, a step further than circularity, but it's making the world a better place. And we're doing that through nature-based solutions. We're doing that through verified tree planting around the world, which is cleaning our air. It's providing habitats for millions of animals around the world. And it's also providing jobs for people impoverished, and helping them secure food through fruit trees, etc. So when we think of being a restorative business, it's really showing the world that these models can exist, and we need restorative businesses to change the world.
David, I had the weirdest gig or early years ago was weaving these, tell me if this sounds familiar, weaving these plastic tubes around trees in burnt out areas in the Shasta Mountains in Northern California. Is that kind of something like where you're talking about restorative, was where you're literally going back and restoring the earth?
Absolutely. Like one story that comes to mind is in Madagascar, we've planted over 17 million trees.
Wow.
And it's a fishing village that cut down the mangrove trees, which are saltwater trees. And the locals didn't know that when they cut down this area, the fish would leave. And they deforest, they cut down vast areas of trees for building supplies and for firewood and for charcoal. So what we've done is we employed over 2,000 people in this area that couldn't eat and didn't have any jobs. They reforested the area. The fish are coming back. And now the locals are actually telling us, this tree planting gig, it's a lot of work. We kind of want to go back to fishing, but now they can do that because we've restored that area. So that's our mission, is to really restore places around the planet, with great partners such as PCNA and commonsku.
Well, David, what about those companies that you're selling to that maybe maybe their mission sustainability isn't so forward in their mind as it is with many businesses, and they don't have necessarily a strong sustainable mission. But at Tentry, you have a term called environmental-ish. And I bring this up because I think we sell to all kinds of clients, and we can help some of our clients even lean environmental-ish. Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to kind of the early days of Tentry, we were printing on American apparel.
Mm-hmm.
Now that wasn't the most sustainable option, but we didn't know how to make it more sustainable at the time. So then we took that next step and we found a sustainable supplier. And at that time, we didn't necessarily know what the best shipping option was, but eventually we took the next step. So the term environmental-ish goes back to making it attainable and accessible to help the planet, and really not intimidating people and making companies and individuals chasing perfection, because progress over perfection, being environmental-ish, is kind of the gateway into being an environmentalist eventually. But it's one foot in front of the other. And that's how we look at the promotional industry as well. There's so much opportunity, but we can't snap our fingers and it's going to be perfect. So it's all about being environmentalist and making these tiny collective actions that over time add up to one big impact.
Yeah.
David, why did you feel it was important to partner with PCNA and open up Tentry to the branded merchandise industry versus selling directly to corporations?
Well, one is the operational expertise PCNA has. They've been doing this for a lot longer than we've been even doing Tentree for. So we know PCNA's got some incredible infrastructure and incredible connections in the industry. Two is PCNA's commitment to sustainability and creating a better world was really appealing to us. And they're a 1% for the Planet member, and they're doing a number of different sustainability initiatives that we really are aligned with. So like those were kind of the two main determining factors. And then that allows us to really focus on our like core business, which is, and what we're specialists at, is growing an amazing brand and restoring the planet. So that is kind of some background on why we work with PCNA.
Right. And I think that's I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that and this is not necessarily an advertisement for, PCNA or any other supplier that carries brands, but I think in putting my past distributor hat on, I think that what you find with retail brands that are hot and have got great traction, that they come into the promo industry, they're not aligned with a distribution partner, then they can get killed on inventory, they get killed on customer service. And they don't understand when a distributor calls and says, I need 500 shirts in these specific sizes, these specific colors, and I need it tomorrow. And that's not really the business that a traditional retailer is involved in, but it's of course how a supplier in the promo industry thinks. So when I saw that, it made a ton of sense as opposed to trying to do it directly. So I want to sort of address a bit of a white elephant here. So I think are very excited about the environmental and sustainable gains that have been made in the promotional products industry. But let's face it, the promotional products industry doesn't have a great reputation when it comes to sustainability. And I'm curious, like this is something that you said, we want to use the promotional products channel as a channel for change. Can you talk a little bit about this and the apparent conflict between, stress toys and plastic with the products that you're presenting to the market, and how it is that we can kind of balance the scales to some extent?
Yeah, when you take a step back and you look at the promotional industry, and when you look at just business models, for instance, around the world in general, companies are now being more sustainable, more circular, and more restorative. We're seeing that with our sister company, Veritree, as well. We're seeing organizations reaching out to us, really wanting to invest in verified restoration. We're seeing that from more and more companies reaching out to Tentree, which in turn kind of goes over to PCNA and our partners to really help facilitate and sustainable and restorative product. So businesses are really looking to align all of their practices with their values. So is that sustainable product? So what is that? So like there's demand there. But then B is, I think when you look at the promotional industry, there's such an opportunity to create impact and to minimize the bad, because it's such a big industry, but also for us to continue to strive to where we need to go, it's back that whole environmental-ish conversation where it's progress over perfection. And if we looked at this industry and everyone wanted perfection, there'd be no change. So that's the alternative. So I think it's really important to kind of think inch by inch, one foot in front of the other, marching in that direction. That's how we're going to make massive change and restore our planet.
David, for us taking this to our clients, it's such a unique experience. And so how do you recommend we present this to our corporate clients as an experience to our customers, as opposed to just another sustainability product that can kind of sound repetitive to some of our customers, but this is a different experience entirely. And does Veritree fit into this or not? How would you recommend us approaching our customers differently with Tentree?
Absolutely. So I'd really think about your key stakeholders. If you're a business and you buy Tentree, for instance, let's say you buy 1,000 hoodies. Well, that's 10,000 trees. That means every one of your employees has planted 10 trees. That means those trees are verified somewhere in the world, and you've made an incredible impact. So not only are you investing in a product, but you're also showing off your company's values. And that's an impact you can talk about to your internal staff, get those stakeholders motivated. And there's a lot of research now coming out that the next generation really wants to work for sustainable organizations that invest in sustainability. So it helps you with employee morale, employee retention. You can use that impact to share with your external like shareholders, like look at how many trees Common SKU has planted through their partnership with 10 Tree. And your team can really feel good about wearing that product day in and day out. And it's a constant reminder that that organization has invested in 10,000 trees, as well as incredible like restorative products. So that's how I would really position it. Every item has a tree code. So like your employees can, or your partners that you give the product to can scan that code, find out where their individual trees are planted and what that impact looks like. And then VeriTree is the technology we use to audit all of our not-for-profits around the world, to make sure that those trees are going in the ground in a timely manner, and then to track like socioeconomic data around hours of jobs created, over time, tracking the permanence of those trees, tracking the additionality, making sure that as a result of a 10 tree purchase, we are the sole founders of those trees. And that impact's not being claimed 1,000 times by 1,000 different companies. That impact is specifically a result of 10 Tree working with PCNA, working with our distributors, and ultimately the end business, which is driving the impact.
There are so many selling opportunities with this, Mark. I was just thinking every shop, if you have a 10 Tree product on a shop, it should contain that copy, should talk about that story. You can build, if you have worldwide brands that you sell to, you could even build campaigns around where you're growing and just a whole entire experience built with that in mind. There's growing type copy to tie into all of that. There's really cool opportunities. Mark, go ahead.
Well, and I think the other thing that's neat about it is that it's not really a T-shirt that you're selling, or a hat, or a hoodie, right? At the end of the day, sure, it's a T-shirt, but when you compare it to a T-shirt without this particular story or without this particular give back program, it's as though the distributor now is selling something that's fundamentally different. And I mean, let's face it, a 10 Tree product is more expensive than a traditional T-shirt without all of these, without this give back program. And what I find interesting, and again, I've put my past distributor hat on, selling apparel, at least based on my experience, was very competitive. Our margins were slim. There were lots of people that had access to the same, whether it was a Gildan shirt or a Fruit shirt or American Apparel, as you say, Dave. And now we're able to come to the market selling not only a shirt that's fantastic quality, but there's this great story. And now it's almost as though the shirt and the story is kind of 50-50. So as people who are interested in selling product, it's a really interesting opportunity. And of course, not everyone's going to be your client, but I think there's this whole section of the market that is just hungry to jump on a campaign like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because what we're really selling, and you think about it 50-50, I'd almost say it's more 75-25, where we're selling our community and what our brand believes in being a restorative business. Like all of our shipping is also carbon neutral. So we've bought carbon credits to offset all of the shipping, scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So that goes all the way back to the way materials are transported from farm to manufacturer. And we look at the manufacturing process. We're paying living wages, not minimum wages. When you look at all of these little things, the auditing of the reforestation projects, the hang tags, there's costs associated with that. And at the end of the day, if you're buying a product and you're not really investing in something that's aligned with your values, you might pay a little bit less. But the overall cost of the product doesn't change. Someone else is just having to pay for that, whether it's manufacturers that aren't getting what it's worth, whether it's the planet or animals that are paying for that. The cost of everything is the same. It's just who really is paying for that, and how does that align with your values, and is that the community you want to join?
Right. And I could be getting this wrong, David, but it's almost as though you're making a charitable contribution first and foremost, and then you're getting this really great product after the fact. If I interpret that properly, when you talk about 75% being this whole contribution to the world in a positive way, and then the product being 25% of it. But so, anyways, I think it's a really cool story. Congratulations. So,
Mark, before you get to your next question, David, I want to ask this. There's so many brilliant and amazing sustainability initiatives that are tied to amazing product providers now. We've had great friends that have joined us from Mir and Cotopaxi, just to name a few. How does Tentry's mission differ from others in the marketplace? And or do you see these brands as competitive, complementary? How do you view that?
I think all complementary. We've had businesses come out, for instance, that plant 11 trees or 5 trees. And like we want to help those organizations as well. We want to direct them to the best planting partners. We want to offer up our Veritree software to make sure that impact is actually happening. So when we look at Cotopaxi and Mirror, it's like a rising tide lifts all boat effect. And it's so amazing seeing these new businesses that appeal to that next generation of consumers, as well as will start appealing to more businesses as businesses look to be more sustainable, circular, restorative. So it's amazing seeing other brands like Cotopaxi and Mirror moving forward.
Mark, before you get to your question, throw your questions in the chat, if you will, for David. We've got about 5 to 15 minutes roughly in our interview here, so we'd love to hear from you. If there's anything you would like to ask, please add it in the chat. Mark, go ahead.
So, David, let's talk about Patagonia. So, Patagonia, of course, leader in the global clothing movement, done incredible things. They turned their back on the promotional products industry, and to Patagonia, their argument was that they linked the promotional products industry to waste, and specifically if a product was embroidered or decorated with a company logo on a Patagonia product and someone left that particular company, they wouldn't need the product anymore and they would discard it. That was one of their main arguments. And so as a result, they now do not sell within the promotional products channel. That obviously encouraged a lot of debate internally as to whether that was the right thing. I think there was some criticism of Patagonia's decision in that particular respect. But Tentree has taken the exact opposite approach. I mean, Tentree and I think Patagonia are similar as mission-oriented brands and that are doing great work around the world. But you've taken the exact opposite approach. You've partnered with one of the largest global players in the promotional products industry and have really leaned into this. Can you talk a little bit about your different approaches and what you might think of what Patagonia did with their decision to not sell within our channel?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I think Patagonia is an amazing organization. We've always looked up to Patagonia as being the leader in sustainability. And Patagonia, the Tom Shoes of the world, those are the brands that really also helped us kind of move forward with Tentree, and they really inspired us. I think Patagonia's perspective on that makes a lot of sense. Nobody wants to have a hoodie that has a big logo of maybe a company that they got fired from, or they're no longer working from. But I believe that the world is also changing. There's businesses out there that aren't buying as many $2.99 t-shirts anymore because how things are changing. So I think you're seeing businesses take a different approach as well. And the embroidery and the branding isn't as big and it's not as bold because they're investing more in each product. They're thinking longer term about this impact, as well as we're making a restorative impact. So the more product we sell, the more good is happening. We are reforesting the planet. It's not like we're minimizing the bad and we're still creating a small amount of bad, but we're actually creating more good by being a restorative business.
Right.
And we believe that we can use the promotional industry and Tentree can help change the promotional industry to plant millions of trees. We've already planted over 4 million trees with PCNA.
Yep.
And if we're not playing in this channel, like people want to support their company, they want product. So someone's got to do it, and we believe in the environmentalist approach.
Yep.
David, from Madison Wallacea, she asked this: the interactive experience that Tentree has created is so interesting. Could you discuss your motivation in creating achievements for perks and getting rewards for doing good by earning seeds? Do you see this gamification has transformed relationships, or how do you suggest distributors communicate this interactive element and its impact on really encouraging engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen with the Impact Wallet, and when you scan your Tentree code, you have your own island. So Bobby, you can have a virtual island, and maybe your first item plants 10 trees in Madagascar. Those trees will be in the shoreline. You'll see fish coming back to your virtual island. You'll see the impact of those trees. Maybe the next item you buy is high altitude trees in Peru. So your island has a mountain on it. You'll see those landslides are no longer happening. So this gamification, this virtual island that each individual customer gets, we've seen the customers are really excited to share their impact, but we've also seen the lifetime value of those customers go up. So like they're much more willing to make a repeat purchase individually. And then as we look at organizations, imagine what that gamification and that inspiration will do to your workforce or your partners to be like, wow, this is so cool. I got a product from my business and now I have my own island, which is growing trees on it. So I would position the tree verification and the tree codes as part of the experience and part of the program, and share this with as many of the organizations as you can as a real selling feature.
I have maybe a dumb question, David. Are you all already talking about the metaverse and how that kind of gamification impacts and falls into that category?
Yeah, absolutely. So with our sister company VeriTree, we actually planted 2 million trees with Samsung, and Samsung has their forest in the metaverse with 2 million trees. And those are verified trees we planted in Madagascar. So it's really cool to see that like digital reality connect with what we're doing for our planet. So it's pretty incredible.
It's fun.
David, we want to switch gears in our final moments here to talk a little bit about how others that are listening to this can build a high impact brand of their own. Clearly, your story is really inspiring with how it is you've created this restorative circular business. Talk to someone in the promotional products industry about how they themselves can go down a similar path. Now, maybe some people that are listening to this didn't start with the mission woven into the DNA of their company. Maybe they're arriving at this 10 years after the fact, 15 years after the fact, and they're now inspired by this. And sure, I think one of the answers can be sell some Tentree product, right? That's a step in the right direction, but I think it's actually something a lot bigger than that. So are there 2 or 3 action items or tips that you might have for people listening to this that want to create a more restorative business and go down this path?
Absolutely. So I'd say one is make sure all key stakeholders are a champion of that impact. And what I mean by that is at Tentree, together we've planted 75 million trees.
Yeah.
Our sales team looks at their targets in trees planted, in CO2 sequestered, in hours of work created. Our consumers on their checkout page, they see the 10 trees that they're responsible for putting in the ground. They get their impact island. So when you think about consumers, when you think about employees, when you even think about investors, we start every board meeting with a big slide talking about how many trees we've now planted as an organization.
Right.
And everyone feels like they are a champion of what we're driving towards. So I think make everyone a champion of your sustainability goals, as opposed to saying PCNA is so great, look at what PCNA is doing. No, they're not it's great that they're facilitating some amazing initiatives, but everyone's really great for supporting those initiatives. So I think that's key. I think defining those values and not deviating from those values and thinking more long-term. People are a lot smarter now. There's a lot more information available, and there's a lot more people that really sift through this information. And let's say there's 2 or 3% of the population really dives deep and understands what businesses are doing. They're also the most vocal. They'll be out there talking about your brand, talking about your values, and if you're really true to your values. So I think setting out those values and thinking about how your business is an influencer. So if you wanted an influencer out there, somebody who is doing something incredible, what are those traits and how do you make your brand that influencer? How do you have those values weave throughout everything you do?
David, I have a final question. I wanted to ask you this. Your goal is to plant 1 billion trees by 2030. And what revenue goal does this kind of map to? Like, how else do you hope Tentree makes an impact in the next several years? And beyond environmental, Tentree is doing some other things. Can you share that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at our goal of 1 billion trees, the impact that it has will be incredible. It would take the same CO2 out of the air, roughly, as 3.7 million passenger cars for a year. It would also provide enough air for 10 million people to breathe for a year. It would be a forest roughly the size of Hong Kong. So the impact of 1 billion trees is pretty incredible. Yeah. When we think about the sales targets associated with that, what I can say is between inception about 10 years ago to now. We've invested roughly $15 million into tree planting, into trips to our tree planting sites, and into verification. And that's why we look at verification as such a serious thing, because we're putting big bucks into restoring our planet. And then when we look at the trees that we're planting, it took us, I think you said at the beginning of this call, 4 or 5 years to plant the first million trees. We've now planted 4 million trees with PCNA in 1 year.
Right.
So it's pretty cool to see this impact compound. But most importantly, we just hope we can inspire other businesses to integrate restoration into their business model. Tentree was created to plant millions of trees around the world and have hundreds of different planting sites. But our sister company, VeraTree, has been created to create thousands of Tentrees that can really drive more impact.
That's a great point. Mark, I'll let you have the final word before we go to our networking.
Yeah, well, I wanted to thank Cindy from Image Source for this question, and it's something that is a sort of a cold hard reality of our industry right now, David, with supply chain problems. So supply chain problems have been a real challenge, I think, globally, not just for the promotional products industry, but many among us on this call have been impacted by supply chain problems, specifically in apparel. Is that something that is, or how does Tentree get ahead of supply chain problems? And is your model unique in terms of being able to circumnavigate some of these issues because of your size?
I think it's really getting ahead of the game, and great partners like PCNA can place buys upfront. We can get product in a timely manner. We can work with them, and it's really staging the sustainable materials as early as possible. There's also a higher demand for sustainable products. We're seeing prices of everything are going up, even like our tree planting, we call it treeflation.
Yep.
It continues to move up. Hopefully we can continue to be 10 tree. We're not 5 tree in the future. But as we look at navigating all of this, is just really learning from our mistakes and trying to be proactive, right? Locking down the best ways of shipping, so we don't have to air product things that's terrible for the environment, and being proactive.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And we certainly, when I say we, this is the global we, certainly hope that our supply chain challenges are more or less behind us. Although I'm sure there's some people that are listening to this that may say that's not true, Mark. But we can be hopeful about this. Bobby, I'll leave it to you to wrap things up.
Okay. Well, David, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun spending this time with you today. Thank you for taking time out on your birthday to join us. And I'm sure the day before Earth Day is one of your busiest seasons. So this means a lot. And so on behalf of the community, we really appreciate you being here.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bobby and Mark. Thanks, PCNA, great partners. And thanks, Common Skew as well. We're really excited to be partnered with you to show the world what the promotional industry can do from a restorative standpoint. So thanks again.